We've all been there, right? That heart-stopping moment. You hear a thud from the other room or a cry from the playground. A kid takes a tumble. It happens every single day. You rush over, check him out, and you see it, a swollen wrist, a painful ankle. And your first thought is almost always the same. It's just a sprain. But what if it isn't?
And that's the big question we're going to dig into in this explainer. Because you see, while sprains are definitely common, in a growing child, that exact same fall, that same impact, can cause a completely different and, frankly, much more significant kind of injury. So let's peel back the layers here. In an adult, a forceful twist to a joint usually tears a ligament. That's your classic sprain. But a child's skeleton, it has this hidden vulnerability, a weak link that completely flips the script on how they get injured.
Okay, so this right here is the absolute key to understanding everything. It's called the physis, but most of us know it as the growth plate. Think of it as this soft, cartilage-like area at the ends of the long bones in kids and teenagers. Its whole job is to churn out new bones so they can grow taller. But, and this is the crucial part, that growth plate is way, way weaker than the tough ligaments surrounding it.
And that difference in strength, it's everything. You see, in an adult, when you twist an ankle hard, the ligament gives out. Pop. But in a child, that same force looks for the easiest thing to break. And it's not the ligament, it's that weaker growth plate. So this isn't a sprain at all. It's a specific kind of break called a Salter-Harris fracture. And getting this diagnosis wrong, well, that can lead to some really serious problems down the road.
So how do doctors even begin to classify the damage to this really delicate structure? I mean, they don't just say, it's broken. It's actually pretty brilliant. They have the system, almost like a secret code, that tells them exactly how the growth plate is injured. And this code is what reveals how serious it is and, what the risk is for a child's future growth.
And that code, it's all built around a super simple mnemonic, SALTR. Each one of those letters stands for one of the 5 types of these fractures. And as you're about to see, they're perfectly arranged in order of how severe they are. It's a really clever way to make sense of a pretty complex injury.
So check this out. You can really see the logic of the Salter mnemonic right here. It basically tells a story of escalating risk. It starts with S for slipped. That's a clean break straight across the plate. Prognosis? Excellent. Then you've got A for above, where the break zips across the plate and then up into the main bone. Still a very good outlook. But things start to get a little dicey with L for lower, because now the fracture involves the joint surface. It gets worse with T for through, a really nasty break that crosses everything. And finally, R for ruined, a crush injury to the plate itself, which, as you can see, has the poorest prognosis of all.
So which one of these are you most likely to run into? Well, it's not even close. The type 2 fracture, the A in Salter, accounts for a whopping 75% of all growth plate fractures. This is that classic injury where the break goes across the plate and then angles up, snapping off a little triangle of the main bone shaft with it.
Now, to really understand the stakes, just look at a type 4 fracture. This thing is a triple threat. Why? Because it damages the smooth joint surface, which can cause arthritis later on. It splits the growth plate right down the middle, and it breaks the main part of the bone. If a surgeon doesn't put those pieces back together perfectly, like an incredibly complex jigsaw puzzle, the growth plate just can't work right, leading to serious growth problems.
Okay, so that's the clinical side of things. But what about you? What about a parent or a coach on the sidelines? How in the world can you spot the difference? Well, it turns out it comes down to 3 pretty simple clues.
It's a pretty straightforward 3-step process. First, the mechanism. Just ask how it happened. Second, observation. Look for swelling, but specifically swelling right over the bone itself. But that third step, feeling the area, that's the real game changer. The #1 sign of a growth plate fracture is what we call pinpoint tenderness. If you gently press along the bone and the kid flinches at one very, very specific spot, right on that growth plate line, your suspicion should be sky high. Often it's not tender over where the ligaments are, but directly on the bone.
Which brings us to probably the single most important takeaway from all of this. Here it is. If a child has pain, swelling, and especially that pinpoint tenderness over a growth plate after an injury, you have to treat it as a fracture until proven otherwise. Even if an initial X-ray comes back negative, you just cannot dismiss it as a simple sprain.
And look, beyond those clues, there are some absolute, no doubt about it, red flags. These are not subtle. If the child literally cannot put any weight on their limb, if you can see that the arm or leg is bent out of shape, or if you see a ton of swelling that pops up almost instantly, the time for guessing is over. You need to get professional medical help, and you need to get it now.
So what do you do in that moment? 3 critical steps. First, immobilize. Splint the limb however you can to stop it from getting worse. Second, refer. Get that child to an orthopedic specialist or an ER right away. And third, and this is so important, communicate. Don't just say their wrist hurts. Tell the doctor your specific concern. I'm worried this could be a growth plate injury because the tenderness is right here, directly on the bone.
And why all the fuss? Why is this so critical? Because the long-term stakes are incredibly high. If a growth plate fracture is missed or isn't handled correctly, a bony bridge can actually form across the plate, and that just shuts down growth in that area. This can lead to one leg or arm ending up shorter than the other, or the limb growing crooked. And these aren't just minor issues. We're talking about potentially permanent, life-altering complications.
So the next time you're on the playground or you hear that thud from the other room and see a child with a swollen joint, just remember the physis, that hidden weak link, because what looks like just a sprain could be an injury that actually alters their body's blueprint for the rest of their life. Knowing the difference isn't just about first aid, it's about protecting their entire future. The real question is, are we listening closely enough to what the injury is trying to tell us?